Welcome, folks, to another podcast series on building high performance teams. Today, I'm delighted to welcome book author Elvin Turner. And Elvin, I know your latest release is Be Less Zombie, which I'm reading and I'm absolutely loving. Elvin, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, Elvin, if we jump straight in, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your career to date, and maybe a little bit about yourself personally as well? Anything that you'd like to
Mm.
share?
Yeah, sure. So I run my own consultancy, focused mostly on innovation and looking at three areas. The first is helping. Generally, it's senior leaders who realize that their organization is running out of road. They can feel innovation slipping through their fingers, and they want to do something about it. So it's helping them figure out, well, what does a system approach to innovation look like without overcomplicating it, getting things moving, and then refining it once we're on the journey. The second part of my work is really around helping develop leaders and managers with some of the skills and the capabilities, and at a team level as well, around innovation. And the third area is teaching in universities on MBA programs on entrepreneurship and innovation. And as you mentioned, writing. I've recently written a book, never intended to write a book. And actually, I was running a university course at Henley Business School. And it was just a bit of fun. We were running this course. They wanted something a bit different. So we came up with this idea of a course that was looking at the difference between what gets called unicorn companies. They're, the ones that are worth over $1 billion, but they're still not making money necessarily, but they're hot. So what are they doing versus the rest of us? So we set up this thing, unicorns versus zombies, which I talk about in the book, which was kind of tongue in cheek, but in the session it really kind of got people's imagination. So I thought, I wonder if there's a book in here. And through the session we come up with these, what are the principles of being less zombie, acknowledging that most of us could probably be doing better than we are with innovation. And it kind of went from there, really. A publisher got in touch and it went from there. So yeah, I spent last year writing the book, and my long-suffering family, I've got 3 kids, brought me lots of cups of tea and cake, and stayed quiet when I was trying to do interviews and things. But yeah, it's been an interesting ride, and the book seems to have gone down well. I'm getting lots of good feedback from it from all around the world, which is really gratifying. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Excellent, excellent. And I beg your pardon, as I said just before we came on, I am reading the book, and it really is fantastic. I don't think I've highlighted so many sections of a book in quite some time. It's a practical guide to innovation. It's superb. You know, I, one of the interesting things about this particular session, Elvin, that I've been looking forward to is I've been talking with many different leaders about kind of leadership and performance. And I'm delighted today to be able to kind of put an innovation slant on that and ask you some questions relation to innovation and leadership. And I guess to start with, kind of, I'd like to know what you've learned, what your experience has been with leadership in an innovation culture. What does it look like?
Mm. Sure. Well, I think from a leadership point of view, when I look at the organizations on the planet now that at least have the reputation for doing the best innovation, you look at people like Netflix, Tesla, but then also some of the more traditional companies like Philips and Toyota, and some of the organizations that many books have been written about. One of the unifying factors that you find in leadership is actually very simple, and they make a choice to innovate, which sounds ridiculous. Of course, we're all choosing to innovate. Well, maybe. I think there's different ways of choosing. Most organizations that I meet, I would say they are dating innovation. They've got kind of have a casual relationship with it. It's a bit of a fling, you could say. And we do campaigns, we turn things on and off quite easily and readily. But usually when a fire lands on the desk or a sudden urgent priority comes, innovation often gets shut down or put on hold, and often gets mothballed. And we never really seem to make the progress with innovation that we want. If you compare that with some of these, innovation superpowers, they are choosing to have it continually switched on no matter what. And the reason they're able to do that is that they calibrate their organizations very carefully, so that when short-term pressures come, it doesn't mean that the innovation has to switch off. And we'll talk a little bit more, I guess, about that later on how they do that. But for me, it's two things. They're defining reality, which is the number one priority, I think, of a leader, is what's really happening, what does it mean, and therefore what should we do? And we're not afraid of the answer. We're going to pursue it even if we don't know how to get there. And the second is, I mean, my definition of innovation is the pursuit of continual relevance. Because if your relevance dies, you start to die. And at any point in time, I like to ask an organization, do you know right now, pick a product set, pick any part of your organization, is its relevance rising or falling, or is it, plateaued and not really moving at all? And do you know, and how would you know? And if we're not that tuned into the relevance and the threats to our relevance, we're not being great stewards of our present or our future. So that pursuit of relevance, the ongoing pursuit of relevance, for me is the heartbeat of innovation. If we want to show up in the future profitably, and we want to show up for the benefit of all of our stakeholders, and we're going to do a good job, we have to be always in pursuit of innovation. And that doesn't mean at the expense of today. We need to deliver today really effectively, but we're also going to find ways to discover tomorrow at the same time.
Very good, very good. I like that kind of that dedicated approach, that dedicated always on approach is essential to be successful. Do you think, have you found in kind of, I guess, leaders that you may have engaged with through your training, that it's something that kind of comes naturally to leaders? Are they born with it, or is it something that they need to learn?
Well, I think it's worth breaking down what innovation is, because one of the most common responses I get to people when I talk to them about innovation is, well, I'm just not an innovative person. That's what they do. It's what marketing does. It's what IT does. And we really need to be very careful about the way that we think about what innovation is. It's a process, turning ideas into action, profitable action, hopefully. And that's about having great insights, forming great questions. Coming up with ideas is part of the process, but it's not by any means all of it. Execution is usually the most difficult part. And it's refining ideas, it's making them profitable, and it's scaling them. And if you look at what's required to turn an insight into profit, or a post-it note into profit, that requires a team, a crowd of very many diverse skills. So to say I'm not innovative means I can't do any of that stuff, which is rubbish, because you've been employed to do something well in your organization, and you may be really great at saying why something won't work. Now, you don't want that person in the brainstorm, because that's going to crush creativity, but you definitely want them to show up a little bit later, because you could end up taking something to market that is absolutely going to fail. And that person has X-ray vision to be able to see inside things and understand why they might fail. So I think, winding back, it's worth looking at, well, what strengths can any leader bring into innovation? And there will be some have instincts around entrepreneurship, which are great. Some are just have a natural ability with change and leading people through change. But I'd say having an understanding of how the whole package comes together, and being able to create an environment where people feel safe to step into new, to step into change, to challenge the status quo. I think often there are some skills and some capabilities that do need to be deliberately developed. And often, I think one of the traps that organizations can fall into, and leaders can fall into, is that just by virtue of their seniority, leaders are expected just to know how to do innovation. And yet they've never done it before necessarily. Well, possibly they've done it a lot at an incremental level, but if we're an organization that's looking for more disruptive ideas, that does require some different ways of working, measuring different things, a different kind of culture. And that doesn't necessarily come naturally to very many people. So the training element, the experience element, is something that I think most leaders would really benefit from. Learning the tools of how it's going to work at the ground level, but more importantly, stepping back and saying, if we're going to lead innovation, we need to spend less time in the weeds, in the operational stuff. We need to empower teams, create capability for our direct reports to run the business. Our job is to step back, to zoom out, to see what's coming from the future, and start to make some strategic choices. So it's about strategy, it's about future, and I think also about customer. How do we pursue relevance on an ongoing basis? Because if you're not doing that stuff, You can bet nobody else is. So there's an interesting dance here around developing the capabilities to do it. But actually, for me, the best leaders, you look at, love them or hate them, Amazon, you look at Jeff Bezos, he claims to spend 3 days a week doing unstructured thinking, with unstructured time, I think is the way that he describes it.
Wow.
He's thinking about the future, and his team are told to do the same, imagining, dreaming. Who's got time to dream? And you think, well, one of the most innovative companies in the world puts a premium on allowing their leaders to do things that other organizations aren't doing. So there's a lot in there, but quite often it's about stepping back and learning really to think more strategically and empower people to get on and do the stuff that a discovery-led organization is going to need more of.
They're really great insights. It sounds like there's an opportunity there for those great ideas that people may come up with, rather than having kind of an ad hoc organic approach to it. There's a process that you can implement that can really help drive those ideas through to success. And look, Amazon, I mean, as you say, love them or hate them, they are just phenomenal. Do you, I think you've touched on it there a little bit when you're talking about Amazon, certainly around innovation and performance. Do you see a strong link there, or how do you think innovation can be utilized to help with team performance, with company performance in general?
Yeah, I mean, I like to split this into two, really. Well, there's lots of different ways you can split it, but keeping it really simple. You look at the numbers, there's tons of research that shows that the organizations that do prioritize innovation and they build it in, and it's not something that you can easily switch off, they do better in the short term and in the long term. Lots of research will back that up, but it's useful just to go down to another level of detail. And that is, if you look at incremental innovation, continuous improvement, it's making today better, it's keeping us relevant in the short term, it's responding to customer needs. That's all great stuff. We need that. And most organizations that I go to, they don't really have a difficulty with that. That's just showing up anyway by virtue of just being responsive to what customers want and need, and employees realizing that some things around us could be better. That's not usually the problem. There isn't usually a shortage of ideas inside companies. The more difficult side is the disruptive, more transformational ideas, which aren't really given enough time and scope, and the capabilities and the resources and the processes that are needed around them are slightly different to what you would need for doing the more continuous improvement stuff. And I think if you look at the research behind the benefit of pursuing more of that kind of innovation, I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but the ROI for pursuing so the return on investment for pursuing more disruptive innovation versus incremental innovation is off the scale. I mean, it's if a big idea lands well, and you're able to scale it, it's potentially the thing that allows you to ride the curve of your industry and make significant improvements. And there's a lot of research to show that is the case. Unfortunately, the thing that comes with more disruptive innovation is a ton of failure, and that's why people run away. It feels very risky, and often it is. And yet we have no choice. If we want to show up in the future, so a guy called Joey Ito, who used to be the director of the MIT Media Lab, he wrote a book a couple of years ago, and in it he was talking about the speed of, we don't really understand the speed of change that's really happening in technology. And if we did, we would put a lot more emphasis on disruptive innovation inside our organizations. And he says in his book, incremental innovation is important, but not sufficient. You can't rely on that because things are changing. The scope and speed of change is so fast and so broad, you can't possibly survive just on incremental innovation. And it's only getting faster and wilder and crazier. So having that balance is really important. But part of that is grappling with the difficulty of, we're going to have to fail a lot in order to find some great ideas. Now, there are lots of ways that you can do that really well. You look at Google, you look at Amazon, you look at Netflix, any of the organizations, Spotify, that are seen to be really innovative. What they've done is made, again, I keep using the word superpower, but they've made a superpower out of learning very quickly and very cheaply which ideas they should invest in, running experiments. And the reason why experiments are so important is that if you can teach your people to have an idea, break down into what are the assumptions that would need this idea to be true, and let's test those assumptions first. It's lean startup, lean thinking. Suddenly, the stakes of innovation or the stakes of pursuing an idea that might otherwise feel too scary are much lower, and everybody feels more comfortable to pursue ideas that otherwise we would have left behind. To feel, you know, the stakes are too high, the risks are too high. And when I've seen this done well in organizations, it really democratizes the innovation process. Everybody suddenly feels liberated and free and actually excited about pursuing the ideas that they'd love to do, but under usual circumstances, trying to do it in the status quo environment is too difficult. So I think this is one of the single most important things an organization could do. Teach your teams to run small experiments so they can get all of the ideas out of the way quickly as possible that aren't going to work, and we can cause maximum use of our resources to fall on those ideas that could actually deliver significant benefit. One more thing I just add to add to this, and we're talking about, you know, the performance benefits of innovation. One thing that I've observed regularly inside organizations, particularly if one of the things I'm asked to do is to come in and rapidly equip a group of people to start running, you know, these experiments and setting up innovation labs and all of this sort of thing. The motivation and engagement that you get from people when you allow them to step into this kind of work is really underrated. I remember I was running a session in New York a few years ago for a music company, one of the big record labels. And it'd been a great day, and so my job on that day was to take everybody's ideas, show them how to pull them to pieces, and then put them back together again in a better way. And then, you know, we're going to go and run some experiments. And one of the participants came up to me at the end and said, "Oh, I know, it's been a really great day. I've learned lots. I'm feeling really good about my idea. But the thing that I've really connected with today is this session has reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. This is about helping customers do great stuff. And you've helped me see today how we can do that in a really, really much better way than I'm able to do in my day job." So it wasn't that the day job was wrong, but it was, I think lots of people that I meet, they're just desperate to do things inside the organization that we all know need doing, we'd love to do, but no one's making the time and giving us the space and the permission to do them in ways that are low risk, low stakes. So I've got nothing to lose if I step into this.
Very cool. And I know in your book as well, Be Less Zombie, you've outlined a structured approach to kind of resources that you apply to innovation at the different stages of the journey, like the early stage when you're just testing the ideas, and then as the ideas develop and become, you know, viable, you can apply more resources there, which I thought was really cool. I think it's a really interesting point you make as well about kind of that incremental piece versus, you know, something big, something disruptive, something different there. That's what'll really make the difference in performance. Do you know, as you're working with these teams, are there kind of common challenges? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see in organizations when trying to, you know, boost this innovation culture
Well,
or implement it?
yeah, I mean, it is all in the implementation, and some of when in the book, I'm going to talk about this to companies as well. In an ideal scenario, the board gets this. They want to start to be more strategic in their innovation, and they recognize that if we're going to have more innovation showing up, we're going to need to do some different things. And resources and processes and capability and the culture starts to get calibrated in a way that allows this stuff to show up. That's not always possible. You might be slightly lower in the organization, or you might be on the board, but the rest of the board are not interested in pursuing that way. So one of the biggest challenges usually, and you know what I've just described, the former is quite rare. I don't find many organizations that are thinking that strategically about innovation. Mostly people are trying to figure out, you know, you've got someone somewhere who wants to do this, but they don't necessarily have the power and the resources to actually make it happen. So Resource is often a challenge. We're just too busy, excuse me, with the day job. You know, we're all at 120%. We're all doing remote work at the moment. We're exhausted. We don't have the tools, we don't have the capability. So that trying to create something that doesn't yet exist and create a product or a service using those things that don't yet exist can sometimes feel like it's too hard. I'm just not going to bother. Yeah. So what I encourage people to do in that context is to start where they can. And again, it comes back down to experimentation. Teaching people to do low stakes work that delivers high returns, and take those results to people higher up in the organization and say, look, we haven't spent any money here, but we've run 2 or 3 experiments around this particular idea, which we thought would be really interesting to look at. And it seems to be trending in this direction. We'd like to come and ask you for 20K to sponsor the next stage of the development. So some really interesting things happening here if you unpack it. First is that usually when senior people are taken an idea to back, there's not much data behind it. It might not be a hunch, it might be a bit more than a hunch, but usually the business case behind many ideas for leaders is not there, it's not sufficiently there for them to feel comfortable backing it. It's still, the stakes are too high for them. If you go to a leader where you've got an idea, you've taken the assumptions, you're starting to prove that actually, or understand that some of these assumptions are actually trending in a way that makes it look as if this idea could have some legs, and you've spoken to customers and you've grown it a bit, you've taken it to some other customers, you've tested some more assumptions, you can go to them with real data that says this is trending in this direction. The risks of us taking the next smallest step forward to learn whether the next assumption is true en route to building this product are very low. So it's I was running a session once for one of the big drinks companies in the UK. And I was talking about this, and this guy in the back row suddenly leapt forward. Turns out he was the head of marketing. They said, so what you're saying is we shouldn't be building things for 50K. We should be learning something for 50 quid. And I thought, yeah, that's a good way to frame it. It's about learning fast, cheap, small. And when the learning demands that we go to the next level, that should unlock the investment. So it's pay as you go. It's low risk. So if you're in an environment where it's really hard to get ideas to move forward, and some of that is because of risk aversion, if you can get very good at learning experimentation, which, you know, I've written about it in the book, lots of resources out there to do that, and give people the confidence, that's what you're doing here. You're giving leaders the confidence to take the next step, because you're taking them data through 2 or 3 experiments to show we should keep going in this direction. And at some point we might find, no, now we've come up against this big assumption with this particular customer group. Actually, it turns out that we shouldn't do this, but it's good that we know that now, so that we didn't go and invest $1 million in this. So this is discovery-led customer development kind of work that really needs to be much more common inside every organization, I think.
It sounds like there's almost it sounds like you've outlined a template or a process to help pursue innovation in a company, to convince people that, look, we should try this, which if I understood you correctly, it's about being able to get people on side, help them understand what you're trying to do in a resource effective manner, just to start off with at least. You mentioned remote work there, Elvin, and I think we're firmly in the remote work era, even, you know, and I wonder will we ever go back to the way it was, 12, 24 months ago? I think probably not. I've been working remotely for quite some time myself anyway. I've been fairly used to it, but I think no matter where anyone goes or whatever job they do, the opportunity for at least some remote work will be there. Do you think this has had an impact on innovation, or do we need to rethink how we develop innovation in this new era?
Well, the people that I've been talking to that are involved in innovation work all around the world have been telling me that innovation budgets have been shut down largely in many organizations. And I think that's natural in some respects. I think it's unfortunate because I don't think it's always necessary, but people are looking to save money. Cash flow is really important. People are trying to stay alive. So at one level, I understand that. So you could say at one level, innovation's prospects look a little bit grim at the moment. It's not the case everywhere. It's starting to come back on again. But I think if you look at the process of innovation, and the things that the kind of work that you need to do in order to make new ideas show up, actually, I don't actually think a huge amount needs to change. It's not the type of work, it's the way that you do that kind of work. So we still need to go through, we still need insights, we still need to come up with great questions that spark great ideas that we can then turn into experiments that will then scale and, you know, make money, and we will build business models around them. So the actual work of innovation, I don't think has changed. I think that the challenge is how we manage workflow around innovation. But actually, I don't think that's really very different from managing workflow in the day to day. So I'm quite optimistic that the ways of working that we were using for innovation can absolutely transfer online without really that much friction required, because we're already doing the work to figure out how we do the day-to-day work anyway. I think there is one part in here that I think is interesting. I think we're in such an interesting point in history where digitalization of business and organizations has had to accelerate, that it now puts many organizations in a position where they could ask some really interesting questions about not just what they take to market, but how they take it to market. And the whole business model innovation discussion is something that I think is ripe, and it has been for many years actually, since since the internet came along. Really, there's been a, you look at Ubers, you look at Amazons, you look at the the sharing economy, the way that digital technology has allowed not just what we take to market, but how we take it to market to be radically transformed. I think there's been many companies who have been looking at the digital agenda and kind of moving at a snail's pace, moving when they've had to. Now everyone's have to move, and they've got a lot of interesting tools and frameworks and ways of thinking that people have got in front of them that are forcing them to change their business model in some respects, because they need to do that to stay alive. And you look at restaurants and the retail sector, and they're scrabbling around trying to do what they can to stay alive. But beyond that, I think there are some really interesting opportunities to rethink many things, so that when we show up in 2, 3, 5 years' time, we're riding a new wave. I'm convinced that new Facebooks are being born at the moment, new Amazons are being born at the moment, because we're at one of those clinch points in history where many things are changing. There's so many moving parts. There will be some people joining dots in a very interesting way and giving birth to companies that will be for such a time as this. They make sense in the current climate. So I think innovation can definitely carry on. It's a choice. I think focusing more on business model innovation is a real potential advantage for every organization.
That's really interesting. It feels like the very nature of the times we're in is it's a breeding ground for disruptive innovation that just might make a massive difference for companies. You mentioned earlier that at the start of this point that maybe some companies are trying to stay alive, and they're cutting back on budgets, and innovation might be one of the first things that's cut, where in fact it's probably one of the areas you need to invest more in, with the opportunities that might present themselves. In your book, Elvin, in Be Less Zombie, one of the great things I like about it is there's a lot of you've got a lot of tools in there that you've given access to. Some of the stuff you've developed yourself, other tools that you've used and recommended. Do you have a kind of a top kind of list of tools? Are there 2 or 3 that you would go to every time that maybe you could share as anyone watching this might like to go and test and have a go at themselves?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the number one thing for me is, we've already mentioned, is the running experiments. And if that's new to you, I really recommend going and looking at the book, The Lean Startup, which is where
So with Eric Ries, is it?
Eric Ries, yeah, that's
Yes,
a very good book, and I referenced that in my book. I mean, that massively influenced my thinking. And so that will be the first one. There's a guy called Alex Osterwalder, who I think you're familiar with, actually, who's done
Yes.
some really great work on developing really helpful tools for people trying to do anything new. Value Proposition Design is an excellent book full of tools to help you go through all through that process. Business Model Generation is another book that focuses particularly on a tool called the Business Model Canvas that allows you in 9 boxes to map your entire business model with post-it notes. You can do it in 15 minutes and it just sparks really helpful conversations. He's just written another book. I'm not here to plug him, by the way, but he just writes great stuff called, actually 2 books. One is Testing Business Ideas. Again, really great book if you're interested in experimentation. He co-wrote that with a guy called David Bland. It's got like 45 different experiment templates that you can run. Really great stuff. And The Invincible Company is the most recent book that Alex Osterwalder has written with others as well. Again, just some really great tools in there. I mean, if you just bought those books, you'd be stuffed full. So I would go for those.
Right.
Be Less Zombie kind of sits in partnership with them, I think, because it also brings in elements of culture and strategy in ways that perhaps those books don't. So I'd obviously recommend that. But just moving off to some slightly different tools, we're looking at having to figure out how to do online brainstorming and things like that at the moment. So there's a tool called Mural, Mural, which is worth a look. Miro, Miro, is a good online collaboration tool. But the place that I would go to look for anything, if you're looking for digital tools to do new stuff, if you haven't come across Product Hunt before, producthunt.com, you can waste a lot of your life in there. There's so much stuff being launched on there every day, all kinds of digital tools to help you build new products or just new gadgets, new apps, all sorts of things. So try not to be very clear what you're looking for, because you can spend hours in there. I know I have. But also, again, looking at things like 3D printers. If you're trying to create quick prototypes of things, the cost of 3D printing has come right down. Prototyping technology, again, go into Product Hunt and type in prototyping tools. You can come up with great mock-ups really easily to test new ideas with customers and things. So there's plenty out there. Those books I would definitely recommend. But again, go to Product Hunt, have a little dig around. It's a real treasure chest of interesting tools. Some of them are brand new and are probably not that stable, but in there you'll also find some very established tools and some write-ups and reviews of them as well. So definitely worth a look.
Excellent. They're fantastic tips, and I know I've read the Lean Startup, and I've read the first one of Osterwalder's books, and I've used that business model canvas, and it is absolutely fantastic. I love it. So I'm going to check out Product Hunt today or this evening and have a look at that for myself. But great tips there. Elvin, this has been an extremely interesting and informative session. I've absolutely loved it. Just like to take the opportunity to thank you once again for giving some time to chat with me today. I know anyone watching this and anyone who's an interest in innovation and looking to kickstart it themselves or within their own company, you've given some gold, I think, there for people to start with. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on. It's been really great to come on and get to know you a little bit as well, actually.
Fantastic. We'll have to stay in touch, Elvin. I'm sure
Yeah,
we
definitely.
will.